going to be talking to you about the Adult Protective Services program. So, and now I don't want to shift.
You can, if you're using your arrows, maybe try to use your mouse pad.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, wow. It wouldn't use any of the other buttons but the mouse. Okay, so this is our DHS vision, Stronger Families for a Stronger Georgia. This is our mission and core values. And what mandates beginning and funding? What mandates Adult Protective Services? It's DIPA, the Disabled Adults Elder Person Protection Act. Our Georgia code is 30-5 through 11. And in the beginning, APS started in Georgia in the 1980s. Funding. We get some funding from the General Assembly. Most of our funding comes from Title 20, which is the Service Block Grant, and we are pretty much state funded. All of our work comes through our APS Central Intake. This is where mandated reporters and individuals in the community make the report. We have 16 APS Central Intake specialists and 2 Central Intake supervisors. They're specialized in information and referral, intervention, accept reports for investigation, and that documentation begins at the point of Central Intake. The Central Intake role, they determine if vulnerable adults meet criteria for investigation. They gather and analyze information from the caller, and they're going to guide the interview based on unique circumstances. And they're going to inform the caller if the report is accepted for investigation and next steps. So what is APS? APS is Adult Protective Services. We protect adults with disabilities 18 and over, adults 65 and older who are not residents of a long-term care facility. These adults are unable to protect their own interests, are harmed or threatened with harm through action or inaction by another. They're at risk due to lack of knowledge or required resources or poor health, or physical or mental impairment, and this is regard to income or verification of citizenship. What is the role of APS? We investigate reports of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. We provide protective services and intervention to reduce the risk of further abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And we increase awareness of reporting of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. That's when we like to go out and talk to mandated reporters about Adult Protective Services. So what happens when a report is received? Once it meets criteria, it's going to be assigned to an investigator to investigate what has been alleged, that abuse, neglect, or exploitation. So there's 2 parts to an investigation. You have the investigation, and then you have the assessment. In the investigation stage, we're determining who, what, when, and how. We want to know who did it, what happened, when did this occur, how often has this happened, and yes, we want to know, is it going to happen again? During the assessment, We're identifying the client's needs. We are assessing the situation and making referrals to resources that can be put in place to prevent that further reoccurrence of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. But we can only do this with the client consent. Once we have completed our investigation and determined that A and N and E has happened, abuse, neglect, and exploitation, we are going to make a report to law enforcement. We call this report a disabled abuse report. But we're going to continue to assess the need for interventions and work with the client to identify appropriate resources. Now I'm going to talk about the different type of abuses that Adult Protective Services investigate. The first one is physical abuse. As you can see, this usually is with infliction of physical pain or physical injury. You will hear or people make, concern someone has been hit, kicked, punched, slapped, objects thrown at them, choking, pinching, broken bones, and yes, some people use restraints. You will see bilateral bruising, pressure sores, pain when touched, cuts, dehydration, malnutrition, burns, whelps, and injury is that inconsistent with the explanation. Now I'm going to show some pictures throughout my slides. Some pictures might be a little disturbing, so I'm going to notify you in advance. And I'm trying to go back. I wanted to show you the stats on physical abuse and I hit it twice. Okay, there it is. So these are the reports that were substantiated for physical abuse, as you can see in 2018, 2019, and 2020. The aqua blue is the referred to Adult Protective Services, and the lilac or purple color is how many cases we actually physically substantiated. Sorry, it won't go to my next slide. There it is. So this is a physical abuse case that we actually investigated. This is a male where the cousin was holding him in a basement. As you can see the discoloration on his back where he had been abused. We were successful in getting this cousin arrested. And verbal and emotional abuse. This is the most hard abuse of all the ones that we investigate to make it a determination if it really happened. Verbal or emotional abuse is infliction of anguish, pain, or distress through verbal or nonverbal acts. This could be insults, threats, intimidation, humiliation, or harassment. But we have made ground, and as you can see in 2018, 2019, and 2020, we were able to substantiate some verbal and emotional abuse cases. Financial exploitation, that's illegal or improper use of disabled adult or adult's resources for another person's profit or gain. I can tell you that financial exploitation is the #1 abuse that we investigate, and it usually is at the hands of a family member that's taken a person's money or property by force, threat, or deceit, unpaid bills, including long-term care. Yes, after they go into a nursing home, they oftentimes continue to financially exploit the person's income. a caregiver's name added to a bank accounts, personal monies not used for their needs, and missing belongings, paper, credit cards. And yes, we see the checks made out to cash. That's normally a red flag when we're doing our investigations. And once again, this is some data, real data of exportation cases we have investigated regarding the number that was referred in 2018, 2019, and 2020. You can see the number of cases that we have substantiated for exportation. And this is a real case again, real pictures of cases that Adult Protective Services have investigated. This was a case where this family member, was not allowing the person to live inside of the house. They was living outside. And as you can see, Adult Protective Services do work with law enforcement. Law enforcement is here checking out the environment. And yes, you will see some fur babies over here. We oftentimes, when we get these cases, we just don't help the elderly or disabled client, but oftentimes we have to help fur babies find a home as well. Self-neglect. Self-neglect is the result of adults' inability due to physical or mental impairments or diminished capacity to perform essential self-care. And these are usually, they're not able to or unable to provide for own medical care, unable to provide essential food, clothing, or shelter, unable to manage financial affairs, and consciously putting oneself, in harm's way. What I want you to know about self-neglect is really not defined in our code 30-5, and self-neglect is not a crime in the state of Georgia. Here's some more data on self-neglect, and these are the cases that were referred to us and cases that we substantiated in 2018, 2019, and 2020. And I have no doubt that 2021, although COVID hit us, I think those numbers will still increase as well. And here are true pictures again of a case that Adult Protective Services investigated. This little lady was living in a home with 157 cats. As you can see, although she was a person that was having some mental issues, she was still able to get on her computer and order from HSN. As you can see, all these boxes here. But we were able to locate a daughter to assist us, and she was placed out of her environment. Unfortunately, she was one that we could not allow to stay in her environment. We do believe in the least restricted environment. Neglect is another abuse that we investigate. Neglect is the absence or omission of essential services to the degree that it harm or it threat of harm the physical or emotional health of a disabled adult or elderly person. In these cases, we normally see no running water, no medication, no food, or the person is malnutrition, no lights or power. Sometimes the person is bedbound and no way to call for help. And we will see bed sores and wounds in these particular neglect cases. Once again, this is true data on cases that was referred to us and cases that was substantiated in 2018, 2019, and 2020. I'm sorry, I warned you that I had some graphic pictures in my presentation, but this is a true picture of another case that Adult Protective Services investigated. This client, once we got the referral, she was only 62 pounds. She was not only being neglected, but she was being exploited. Usually, exploitation and neglect go hands in hand. When we got this referral, the son kept saying, my mother do not have any wounds. She was being taken care of, but we found the opposite. And unfortunately, by the time we was able to get her out and get her assessed, she did not make it. Sexual abuse is another abuse that we investigate. And sexual abuse is any kind of sexual behavior directed towards an at-risk adult without the person's full knowledge and consent. It could be at the hands of a spouse, a partner, a family member, or a trusted person, anyone that can perpetrate sexual abuse. And here are some signs that typically we see the abuser. These are the behaviors that we will see in a abuser. They will isolate the victim from other family and friends. They'll attempt to answer for the victim. They want to be present for all interviews. They are charming, helpful, friendly. And we do see them blame the victim from being clumsy or difficult, say the victim is incompetent, crazy, or have dementia. And yes, they use the system to their advantage and gain against the victim by knowing their rights. During our investigation, we do have some clients that have dementia or Alzheimer's. We are not medical experts, but we do look at a person's capacity. Capacity, all adults, this is what we are going to assume. We're going to assume that all adults have the capacity to make or communicate significant responsibility decisions concerning their health, safety, and the ability to manage their money and property. Only the due process through the judicial system is the only means to determine whether an adult is incapacitated. But during our investigation, we do use tools to assess the individual, and that's how we determine if a person is having memory loss. And we will petition courts if we cannot find a responsible family member, or if the services that we're trying to put in a home is still not going to be enough. Adult Protective Services case manager will petition the court along with their general assistant, attorney general, for someone to have a guardian and or a conservator. Sometimes during our investigations, we also determine that some our clients need a little bit more help, and this is when we can offer ongoing services. Sometimes we just cannot get everything resolved during our investigation. Ongoing case time frame is only 3 months or 6 months. And we can only provide ongoing services with the client's consent. So after we do our investigation, and even if we say to the client, we like to work with you a little bit longer because we know what the services, whatever we are trying to put in place. But if the client is telling us they want us to, leave them alone, that is what we have to do. So we cannot put a case in ongoing services if the client is telling us they do not want ongoing services, only with the client's consent. Confidentiality. All information is confidential. From the time the initial report is made through central intake, through the APS, Adult Protective Services investigation, until closure. Everything that is known about a case is kept confidential. We do share with individuals that's doing an investigation, like law enforcement, the DA, or anyone that's doing an investigation, medical examiner, the coroners. Those are the people that we share information with. Once again, that's because they're doing an investigation. Other than that, everything is kept confidential. APS guiding principles. This is what we use, these guiding principles to guide the work that we do daily. We believe each person's case is unique. Client's interests and autonomy is priority. We're going to respect client's right to self-determination. We believe in getting consent to provide services. We going to believe a person have capacity until that investigation tells us otherwise. We're going to provide the least restrictive services as possible as we can. We're not going to go put someone in a nursing home just because the reporter wants their mother, their grandmother, father, or son in a nursing home. We're gonna provide the least restricted services as possible. We're gonna hold every information that is received confidential. We believe in multidisciplinary approach. Adult Protective Services attend multidisciplinary teams, and we like to hear from others about the situation. That's how we learn. The wrong intervention might be worse than none at all. This is a great one. I'm going to repeat this one. The wrong intervention may be worse than none at all. That's why we do our investigations. That's why we're not going to listen to the reporter source. We're going to do our investigation to determine what is the best intervention for the client. We believe all clients have the right to be protected. We believe in family and informer support, professional boundaries, and substituted judgment. This is a list of mandated reporters. They are mandated to make a report to the Adult Protective Services Program anytime they believe either abuse, neglect, or exploitation has happened. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what I do want you to know about this list is that medical professionals, social workers, and relatives, in that order, are the number one that make, although relatives is not mandated reporters, but medical professionals and social workers are the top two reporters to the Adult Protective Services Program, and that is followed by relatives. TERF and IRF. TERF stands for Temporary Emergency Respite Fund, and IRF stands for Emergency Relocation Funds. TERF was funds that were appropriated by the Georgia General Assembly in the state fiscal year 2015 in House Bill 744. It was really to assist law enforcement when law enforcement was arresting a caregiver in the middle of the night, and now either an elderly person or a disabled person no longer have their caregiver, law enforcement really did not know what to do with them. Usually they would take them to the hospital. And we know that everybody don't need emergency or medical assistance. So this is the way that we were able to do some temporary emergent respite funds, and law enforcement use those funds now to be able to assist in placing these clients when a caregiver is being arrested. TURF is not intended to resolve issues of chronic homelessness or issues of cognitive impairment due to use of alcohol or narcotics. And all mental health crises should be addressed to the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities Crisis Line. TURF can only be assessed by law enforcement, Healthcare Facility Regulations Department of Community Health, APS, and PGO. It was extended to Department of Public Health during our pandemic. And you might want to know why HFR is on here, because we work in a multidisciplinary team with HFR when they are closing down unlicensed personal care homes, and Adult Protective Services is a part of that team. EARF, once again, stands for Emergency Relocation Funds. We assess these funds after we have a case and believe that a client needs emergency relocation. We can assess these funds. And this can only be assessed by APS and PGO, which stands for our Public Guardianship Office. APS is not able to. These are things that we just cannot do. We cannot take action when APS criteria is not met, when there's no abuse, no neglect, and no exploitation. We just cannot assume legal guardianship as first step. We cannot act as first responders. If something is really going on and something is an emergency, we're going to advise you to call 911. We cannot make adults comply. We cannot be a discharge planner. And we just cannot assume ongoing services without consenting with the client. We cannot placement someone in a facility or a mental health hospital. But APS can, and we will act as an advocate to assist in locating housing resources. And we're going to strive to find that least restrictive measures to ensure the adult's safety and independence from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. APS will bring adult to safety, obtain factual evidence, honor adult wishes to every extent possible, hold perpetrators accountable, and we're going to collaborate with others in the best interest of the client or the adult, and we're going to educate professionals in the community. Long-term care facility. Adult Protective Services do not investigate reports of abuse, neglect, and exploitation when a person is in a long-term care facility. These are considered skilled nursing homes, immediate care home, personal care homes, those community living arrangements. These reports go to the Department of Community Health. DCH regulates and licenses these facilities. And you will see their Georgia code here, which is 31-880. Now, sometimes we do get involved, like I said, with HFR, but usually those are unlicensed personal care homes. So you might hear adult protective services going out into a personal care home, but it's not a licensed personal care home. Those are unlicensed personal care homes. So who to call? In a community setting, you're going to call Adult Protective Services. Our Metro Atlanta area phone number is listed. And our outside Atlanta area, which is the 1-800 number. And you're going to choose option 3. A residence of a long-term care facility, once again, you're going to call Department of Community Health, Healthcare Facility Regulations. Their numbers are listed, as well as their toll-free number. In any setting who a person might be at immediate risk, we're going to ask you to call 911 or your local law enforcement agency. And for a resident in a long-term care facility who needs an advocate, you can call the Long-Term Care Ombudsman. And their numbers are listed as well. It's the same 866 number, but you're going to choose option 5. And this is my contact number. Thank you for allowing me to present to you today. And I think questions will come at the end of the presentations at the end of today. Thank you.